Choice hotels get you more for your money so you can maximize any road trip. Like with the road trippers we see here in their natural habitat, the breakfast area at a Comfort Inn. Here's a dad teaching his son how to make waffles, fluffy golden waffles. There's a mom making sure her daughter eats some fruit to avoid the "I'm hungry" from the back seat. And a sibling standoff over the last muffin. This is the cycle of vacation maximizationing in all its glory. Check into more. Book direct at choicehotels.com.
Welcome to Farm Year Daily, a field-forward podcast. I'm David Geiger, your host. I've been on Iowa TV and radio for the last decade, and I am excited to join you on this new podcast, Farm Year Daily. Today on the program, we're going to talk about relay cropping, wheat and soybeans, with Evan Brehm of the Iowa Soybean Association. Then we'll check out some of the weed questions farmers are asking in southeast Iowa. Virgil Schmitt, agronomist with ISU Extension, has plenty to go over. Please be sure to like and follow the podcast as well as our social media at Field Forward Pod. We'd love to have you join our community, keeping folks in Iowa informed about what is affecting our farmers. This is Farm Year Daily. And joining me on Farm Year Daily, we have Evan Brehm, a conservation agronomist with the Iowa Soybean Association. Evan, it's so good to talk to you again. And the reason why I'm calling is because I saw you post something online about wheat and soybeans being grown together. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
I'm excited too, David. It's called recropping, and I discovered this at the Iowa Soybean Association. We've done some research trials on it, and just in general, some farmers have been inquiring about this practice the past couple years, but it's a really great concept from a lot of different perspectives. Now, it's not going to fit every farmer for every farming operation, but what's really cool about it is you are growing. Typically, it's probably cereal rye, or in this case, wheat, which in Iowa, we've shown we can grow wheat. You know, I can't say we're Kansas, but we can grow some good wheat here in Iowa, in my opinion. And it's shown to work very well. So farmers who have been adopting cover crops in the past start seeing, hey, if I let my cover crop, cereal rye or wheat, grow longer, I get, more health benefits, cleaner water, potentially reducing herbicide-resistant weed populations. And then so some of these farmers have taken to the next step and said, what if I plant into my standing cover crop, which we call this planting green? This one in particular is farmer initiated on his own. They attended a meeting and said, let's try relay cropping, growing soybeans and wheat at the same time and harvesting both of them as a cash crop.
You were just mentioning that there's some health benefits to the soil when you're doing both of those things. Is that right?
As you let them grow longer, your soil health is going to improve. And, when you let that cover crop grow out there longer, keeping the soil armored, reducing wind and water erosion, but also infiltrating water, which creates more clean water, but also keeps our water in the field. And then seeing a potential benefit where a cover crop, letting it grow even longer, maybe you can suppress some of those weeds, like herbicide-resistant weeds, such as water hemp and common lamb's quarter, that these cover crops do such a good job of suppressing. So the longer you let that cover crop go, the more potential you're going to have to reduce and suppress those weeds.
What kind of prompted the start of wheat in particular as something you might grow as an option to grow alongside the soybeans?
So winter wheat works fantastically as a cover crop, but I would argue that we can grow some really good wheat in the state of Iowa, and farmers letting that wheat grow longer, allows us to harvest another cash crop. And that said, why wheat works really well as initially as a cover crop is you can plant it in the fall. So in this case, the farmer drilled it last fall after they chopped the corn for actually corn silage for dairy cattle, and they're able to drill that wheat in there. And then so you pretty much have your cover crop. It's done. It's going to overwinter with it being winter wheat. And then the farmer says, hey, it's already nice and well established. Why not plant soybeans into it? We call it planting green. And then so what prompted the farmer to do this even further is because they have attended some meetings that Iowa Soybean Association has hosted talking about relay cropping. and he had seen the success, understands the challenges, but also the outcomes of what they could get from this. So this was 100% farmer initiated, and they just really want to learn it for themselves, and really just pushing wheats because it does overwinter and is established very well in the spring, and taking that even farther into the growing season.
Now, I'm looking at some of the video you posted online, and the wheat is pretty tall in it. Are there no concerns about it, I guess, spacing out or making it so the soybean plant isn't getting enough sunlight?
Yeah, and that's definitely a concern. So these were 30-inch row soybeans, so they planted the soybeans into it with their planter. So the beans are, as I uncovered the canopy, and this is pretty typical, they will get leggy because they're trying to reach that sunlight. With the wheat planted the time of year that it was, and with the potential of harvest coming around the corner here in a few weeks, there is a little bit of concern for competition and sunlight. But those soybeans, they're pretty durable, and they're pretty resilient. And so I have full confidence that they'll be able to push up through, especially once that wheat gets harvested, they'll really take off.
So you are a conservation agronomist. Let's talk a little bit about the conservation aspects. You mentioned this is very similar to a cover crop. What is the wheat and soybean combination do for the soil?
We talk a lot about diversity and really anything. Even your backyard, they say plant different trees, in case a disease or storm comes through, you're not spreading your risk out, essentially. And it really comes into play in row crops as well. We talk a lot about diversity, and when you have different crops or you have different trees in your yard, same concept, you're spreading out your risk. And when you combine a diversity of two cash crops together, soil health wise, there's a lot going on. There's different activity, different soil microbes, different root exudates that are doing different things for the soil, much like us diversifying our diet as well. If you're on meat potatoes all the time, you're going to get that result. That's why you should have some vegetables, have some fruits as well. So the more diversity, the better for our soil, because there are different microbes, different organisms in that soil that react differently to, even from an above ground cash crop point of view, diversity is a lot better. So soil health wise, you can take a Haney soil health test. I would highly recommend that. And you can really see what's going on in your soil. The more that you diversify your cash crop, your above ground, whether that's in a cash crop or in a cover crop situation, you are adding way more soil health benefits than what you really realize underneath the ground. And what that will do is, in turn, your soil health improves, your soil organic matter improves. That we can start going down those trails all day long. You start talking about your soil becomes more resilient, can take temperature influxes more, it can cycle nutrients more efficiently. Fertilizers cost a lot for our farmers to put out there. When you have improved soil health, your soil will more efficiently use those synthetic fertilizers that you put out there. So really, diversity, even if it's a relay crop, you're adding so many soil health benefits to your soil because of the diversity.
Evan, looking at this from a farmer perspective, in terms of the relay cropping, what are some of those timings?
For a relay crop point of view, I would utilize cereal rye or winter wheat, and I would plant these in the fall. So depending on what crop is coming out, typically it's probably going to be corn, just with the corn soybean rotation. Typically, not all the time, but most times we have a corn soy rotation. We don't typically see a lot of soybeans after soybeans. So once you take that corn out, and even before, you can do a different application, but I would say get your cereal rye or your wheat in the fall, and then that will overwinter. Now, I will say this field was interesting because half of the field to the south, which I don't show, was actually cereal rye, and winter wheat was on the north half. The farmer was experimenting. That winter wheat early February looked a little bit tough because wheat can actually not withstand Iowa's really cold temperatures as well as cereal rye. But at the time, I said, we're going to be just fine. And that wheat was a little more yellow than the cereal rye. It bounced out of it, looked absolutely fantastic. So from a relay crop perspective, I would plant green, plant your soybeans into that standing small grain, cereal rye, or winter wheat. Do that in, I like earlier planting dates for soybeans because we do take advantage of the summer solstice and longer longer day length. And then so you'll plant your soybeans into your cereal rye or your wheat, and then they will grow together. No need to put any fertilizers out there, no need to do any herbicide. Then you would harvest your wheat in late June, early July, and then you'll let your soybeans continue to grow out from there and harvest them in the fall.
Wow. And when it comes to more information on this, because you are with the Iowa Soybean Association, is there any work that's being done to talk more about soybeans being utilized with other plants, other crops in order to enhance and diversify the soil?
Yes, there's a lot of cost share programs out there. Really gets farmers started on these practices, especially cover crops. But looking at diversifying an operation, Iowa Soybean Association, as well as other organizations in the state of Iowa, are really looking into this relay cropping system. And the reason why is because we know there's soil health benefits. We're keeping that soil covered all the time. We're adding diversity and possibly, looking at another open market for small grains in the state of Iowa. And at the Iowa Soybean Association, we do have ongoing research. If you're interested, we'd love to chat with you. I know we're working with a corporate organization that is looking at assisting farmers and helping offset some of these financial costs if they're willing to work with us and according to protocol. So we'd love to chat with you more at the Research Center for Farming Innovation. And sometimes even these conversations happen organically. They happen at a meeting. And what I like to ask farmers, I say, what do you want to know? And so there's a lot of trial work, a lot of opportunities out there for farmers wanting to gauge and look at a different, maybe management operation on their operation.
Evan Brehm, conservation agronomist with the Iowa Soybean Association. Thank you so much for joining us on Farm Here Daily.
Thank you, David.
This is Farm Here Daily. We'll have more conversations on the way, but let's take a look at the market close for Monday. July corn down 5 3/4 cents, 4.38 1/4. September falling 2.5 at 4.20 3/4. Soybeans in July 8 1/4 weaker at 10.33 1/2, with August falling 9.5 at 10.27 1/4. Soybean meal in July $2.40 a ton, in the red at $293.90. July wheat up a nickel at 5.39, with September rising a nickel as well, 5.53 1/4. In the livestock market close for Monday, June live cattle up $1.07, a hundredweight $216.55. August $1.65 stronger at $2.11 even. Feeder cattle in August $2.92, a hundredweight more at $301.75, with September rising $3.20 at $300.90 a hundredweight. Lean hogs in June down 47 cents, a hundredweight at $100.85, with July rising a nickel, $104.97 a hundredweight. That is the Monday market close. This is Farm Here Daily. And joining us on Farm Here Daily, we have Virgil Schmitt, an Iowa State University Extension agronomist for Southeast Iowa. Virgil, thank you so much for joining us on the program once again. Always glad to talk to you. And tell us a little bit about some of the emergence and growth of the crop in your area.
In general, emergence and growth has been really fairly good for both corn and soybeans, as well as for the forages. The corn is over here is mostly V4 to V6 and generally looking good, although we did have some issues early on with some of the corn that was planted just before Easter, and then the weather got cold and wet after that, and so that did take a few fields out. And then we've had a little bit of an issue with some of the fields where some of the corn got planted in the moisture and other places it was a little bit dry, and so we have some uneven emergence that's occurred there. On the soybean side, again, soybeans are really looking pretty good, although they seem to be developing just a little bit more slowly than I remember they should be. Most of the soybeans are at the unifoliate to one or two trifoliate stages. We would call that VC to V2. Most of them are there and look pretty good, although we did have some crusting problems. Probably the most common call I got last week was how low a population is a keeper on the soybean side here. So there are some issues out there. We've kind of had two phases of harvesting hay. A couple of weeks ago, we had a long string of dry days, and there was a lot of hay that went down and was baled up at that time. And as one of my counterparts put it this morning, we made a lot of progress on the second half of the first cutting last week. We saw a lot of mowers out, mid to late week, a lot of balers out late week and over the weekend here.
That's fantastic. I was expecting, considering the good weather we've had, that we'd have some good progress, but that's a lot of hay progress going on over in your part of the state. Virgil, when you're getting phone calls from farmers, we did just start June. What are the typical calls coming out?
Probably most typical at this point in time is weed management, as people are thinking about getting into their post-emergence applications, and they're seeing some things out there that they'd like not to see, and so how do I adjust my herbicide program to reflect that? Those are probably some of the most common ones, and of course we also have some drift issues from time to time, and so we have to deal with those also here. Later on, we'll get into a little bit more of the diseases and fungicides and so forth. The other thing that farmers probably ought to be watching is if they're seeing some heads of smooth brome grass on their fence lines or in the adjacent ditch. If they look at that closely, what they're going to find is that there was a stalk borer in there, and that top basically died because the stalk borer injury. They've basically outgrown the plant, and so then they tend to look for adjacent corn plants to infest, and so they may want to kind of be watching that. If they're seeing a lot of those, maybe consider putting an insecticide just around the edge of the field just to knock them down.
That's an interesting point. Some stalk borer going on along the fence line, you said. And is this a typical time of the season that pops out?
Yes, this is a very typical time. They develop based upon growing degree days, and we have hit the number of growing degree days for them to basically be outgrowing those stems and moving on.
You mentioned as well earlier that weeds and weed management is a typical call. What are the weeds in southeast Iowa that are popping up right now?
Well, probably one of the most common ones is the one that you expect, and that is water hemp.
Water hemp, yep.
Because water hemp has just had this tremendous ability to overcome or some of our herbicide technologies here, and so pest resistance is really the big issue here, I think, in saying, okay, so what are my options now?
And what do you give as recommendations for folks facing resistant issues with some of their pests?
Well, first of all, I need to know what the pests are. If somebody says, well, this is our favorite insecticide or this is our favorite herbicide package or whatnot, that might be theirs, but is it right for you? And so the first thing I'll ask is, what are you concerned about? Are you concerned about stalk borers? Are you concerned about European corn borers or bean leaf beetles or whatever? Or in the weed side, is it a water hemp? Is it a giant foxtail? What is it that you're really concerned? And then you start to build things around that.
I guess looking into the next couple of weeks, and you mentioned it already, We'll be getting some disease concerns, some fungicide questions here in a bit. Will that be in the next couple of weeks, or is that further down in the month of June?
Yeah, it's going to be further down in the months, actually probably in early July
Early
when
July.
we start to get that. But people do get concerned and probably overly concerned when it comes right down to it. They tend to maybe put some things on when it really isn't economical to, particularly as we're looking at this environment that we're in right now where commodity prices are so low. You have to have a lot of yield gain in order to pay up the bill for a fungicide application.
Yeah, you don't want to deal with it when you don't have something to deal with. And I think that part of the reason why I asked that is because Southeast Iowa is a little typically warmer than the rest of the state, and so I didn't know if some of the growing degree days over in that area typically influenced some of that bacteria or some of that disease growth a little earlier than the rest of the state.
It depending upon the disease, the answer is yes. Not only do we tend to be the warmest part of the state, but we also tend to be the wettest part of the state.
Right.
And so when you get warm and wet, there are certain diseases, such as gray leaf spot. I think Washington County over here was kind of ground zero for gray leaf spot in the state of Iowa. And that's basically because it likes hot, humid weather conditions, rainfall, and so forth. And that's basically what they've had. We've got some others that like a little bit drier weather. Some of the northern corn leaf blight likes cooler weather, and so that's part of that decision you make. If I'm seeing a little bit of disease out there, how much am I seeing? Is it a little bit or a lot? Where is it on the plant? And looking forward to the next couple of weeks, are we going to have the weather to make that disease blow up if we don't do something? And so those are all the things that kind of go into that equation in terms of making that decision.
Virgil, as you head into the rest of June, are there any places or any field days that you're excited about or looking forward to talk with folks over in the fields?
Yes, we are having the spring field day at the Southeast Research and Demonstration Farm and let me just pull my calendar up here really quickly. And I think it's June 17th, but let me make sure I'm not lying to you and to everybody else. Yes, it is on June 17th at 1:30 p.m. People, I think, will find that to be a very, very interesting day. We're going to be dealing with, some herbicide issues out there, injury and efficacy and so forth as one of the real prime ones. And so I think people will find that to be really interesting and a great learning experience. And and that starts at 1:30. Normally we do a training for the certified crop advisors on the morning before the spring field day. But we aren't doing that this year because we're going to be doing a special field day on July 30th, which is the day before the National Strip Till Conference, which will be in Iowa City on the 31st and then August 1st. But we are going to be having a strip till field day out there. We've got about 10 to 11 bars already lined up, and so people will be able to see those and see them operate and learn about how to evaluate. And that's where the CCAs, the Certified Crop Advisors, can pick up their credits that they would normally get in the spring before that spring field day. One other thing I just might mention is that I mentioned the 17th for the Southeast Research Farm. The following day for the people in Northeast Iowa will be the Northeast Research Farm field day, and that will be starting at 11 a.m. and they are going to be having Secretary Nag there, and so that might be attractive to people. And then maybe just the next day, we've got kind of a plethora of them going on that week in Jackson County, Maquoketa. So we're getting kind of far into the Northeast there, but they will be having a cover crops field day at 9 o'clock in the morning in Maquoketa. So, number of things going on here as we get into June.
Fantastic. So June 17th, 18th, and the 19th, there's going to be stuff going on all around the state, but particularly June 17th, 1:30 p.m. in Southeast Iowa at the Southeast Research Farm. Is that correct?
Correct.
Virgil Schmitt, Iowa State University Extension agronomist for Southeast Iowa. Really appreciate having you on Farm Here Daily.
It is always my pleasure.
Thank you, Virgil. This is Farm Here Daily, a Field Forward podcast. Thank you for listening. Again, in order to continue to produce this type of local Iowa content, we would love to have you join our community. So please follow the podcast, send it over to your friends, take a look at our social media channels at Field Forward Pod. Additionally, you can find me on social media at Geiger Reports, as well as WHO TV Channel 13 every weekday in their morning and noon hour programs. Again, I am your host, David Geiger, and I'll be back again tomorrow, everybody.